right, it looks like we are good. Are we good, Akil?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for coming out and supporting us along the way and supporting us in our previous town halls. We are here for our next iteration of UD Town Hall series. This is episode 5 with Democratic candidate for Sheriff Curtis Clemons. My name is Jalen Pettis. I'm the Vice President of Unity and Diversity.
My name is Akil Taraga. I'm the president of Unity and Diversity.
And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Let's get rocking. So, Mr. Clemens, I guess let's just start with a brief introduction of yourself, of your history, where you came into focus, how all of this started.
Okay. How all this started for me, I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years. I grew up as what they would call a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force for 33 years, and we literally traveled all around the world. And so it was a natural extension for me to want to also serve my country in the military, as my father and several of my uncles had done. And so I joined the Marine Corps, spent 6 years in the Marines, again, traveled all over the world. And while I was in Okinawa, Japan, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article, and it said at that time, back in 1988, that Gwinnett County was the fastest growing county in the nation, and that they were hiring people and they were paying top salaries to attract people and keep them here in Gwinnett County. And so I actually began my hiring process with Gwinnett County from Okinawa, Japan. And I applied. I came back to the United States after I finished my term in service with the Marine Corps. And I did an interview with Gwinnett County Sheriff's Department, and I was actually hired that day after the interview. And I worked 5 years at the Sheriff's Department. I did everything imaginable at the Sheriff's Department, from working in the jail. And the jail that I worked in that was there when I started is not the county jail that most people are familiar with today. The jail that I worked in was probably no bigger than about maybe 5 trailer or mobile home parks trailers put together. And then they had actual 6 trailers in the rear of the brick and mortar building. And so I was there when the current detention center was being built and provided security for it, and actually walked in there on day 1 and began the process of training deputies. And also, like I said, walking the halls, providing security. I did everything from transporting detainees back and forth to court and picking them up in other counties on warrants. Served warrants on people that were wanted on criminal warrants, served civil papers, worked at the courthouse, did everything imaginable except worked in the administration. And very quickly, long story short, is at the time, back in 1994, the Sheriff's Department in Gwinnett County actually were being sued because they did not have any minority supervisors in place anywhere. And so the sheriff at that time tried to essentially appoint me to the position of sergeant without going through the regular promotional process. I didn't think that that would be fair to the other people who worked just like I did. And I wasn't going to be anybody's token sergeant just so that he could get out of the lawsuit. So it was at that point I made a very tough decision, and I moved over to the police department. Unfortunately, I had reached the rank of a corporal at the Sheriff's Department, and when I made that move, I had to go all the way back down to a rookie officer with Gwinnett County Police Department and attend the police academy all over again. I had to go through Gwinnett County Police Academy instead of the state academy. But throughout that process, completed the academy, worked my way through Gwinnett County Police Department. Again, did everything conceivably possible there with Gwinnett County Police Department. I was a detective for 14 years. I worked homicide cases, probably one of the most famous cases I worked. You may remember the case involving the dentist up in Beaufort who killed his wife and tried to make it look like it was a suicide. I worked that case and interviewed the children because I worked in special victims where we handle crimes against children and the elderly and sexual assault. And so I got an opportunity to interview that case and worked with the lead investigator, and we helped bring a murderer to jail. Also worked a case with Ed Kramer. You may be familiar with the Dragon Con. You guys familiar with that? Well, Ed Kramer was one of the original founders of Dragon Con, and I ended up as a special victims unit investigator. I went after him when I got multiple reports of him sexually abusing children. So, and ultimately made the arrest and got him in custody and got him off the street. So I worked all kinds of cases. I worked code enforcement, and eventually I worked my way up to become the first person of color to be appointed properly to Assistant Chief of Gwinnett County Police Department. And I hold the title of being the only minority to have obtained that rank. That's the highest rank ever, because the next level up would be actually Chief of Police. And so I obtained the next highest rank, which would be Assistant Chief at that time. And no one has ever reached that rank aside from me. So that still holds today. And a little bit about me, I have two grown children. I have a son who's I would say aspiring comedian. He actually went to school. Both my children actually went to school here in Gwinnett County. But my son is currently in New York, and he's doing very well as a comedian up in New York. Not the plan that I have for him as far as life, but he's pursuing his dream, which I think is important, that you pursue your dreams and not the dreams of your parents. You have to do what's best for you. And I have a daughter who also attended Gwinnett County Schools, and she's working on her degree in sociology with a minor in marketing at the University of West Georgia. And so, you know, for me, again, I'm a proud father, been here in Gwinnett County for 31 years. This is my home, and I love Gwinnett County, and I want to continue to see Gwinnett County grow and be more inclusive and embrace the diversity that we have here in Gwinnett County. We're the most diverse county in the southeastern region of the United States, and I think we are in the top 10 in the United States as far as being diverse. So I would just like to, again, coming from a multicultural, multiracial background within my own family, I would love to see Gwinnett County continue to embrace that inclusion and diversity.
Of course. So, and you bring up a very good point. I mean, like, I believe it was in 1989 when you were appointed deputy sheriff. I mean, did you face any discrimination in both, like, in the sheriff department and the police department at that time?
Oh, absolutely. Mind you, myself and my opponent, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Taylor came on, I believe, in 1993. I came on in 1989. But even in 1989, I was one of only about 10 minority officers in the entire county. And that includes the police department, the sheriff's department, corrections, and fire. So there was only about 10 minorities in place at that time when I came in. So yes, it was a very difficult time. I did face quite a bit of discrimination, and was, I guess you could say, if something went wrong, it was always assumed that it was my fault or our fault. It had to be one of the minority officers involved. I literally had a sergeant at the time who refused to train me because he did not want to give me access to the National Crime Information Center computer or data, because he felt like, in his words, and I quote, if we train him, he's going to be able to tell them all of our information. And I literally had at the sheriff's department others who just literally refused to train me. There were no consequences to their, overt, exclamations that they were not going to train me, that they did not want to be involved with me, essentially because I was Black. And so rather than dealing with them or disciplining them, I was moved, or I was given to another person to be trained. So I went through a lot throughout those years in the sheriff's department and coming up, and not so much with the police department, but again, things slowly began to change, and we were, we worked hard. I worked hard, not only to show that I was just as capable, if not more, than my peers. Uh, Forget the whole race issue, just to show that I was capable and I was intelligent, and that I could solve crimes and do things legitimately as a law enforcement officer, actually helping people, which is why I got in law enforcement in the first place. If we have time, I'd love to tell you a story about the incidents that actually got me involved in wanting to become a law enforcement officer.
Well, I think we might have time for that.
Okay.
We do want to know about you, so
No, okay, I could go ahead and tell the story.
the floor.
Okay. All right. Well, the first thing, this may be beyond you guys' age. You are the generation behind us. There used to be a show called Gooma Powell USMC with a guy named Jim Neighbors, who used to play a goofy kind of Marine, but he had a very tough, very stern sergeant called Sergeant Carter. And I don't know if you guys know that show, are very familiar with it, but long story short, when my brother and I was about maybe 8 in third grade, we had come home from school, and our dog had gotten out of the backyard and had been struck and killed by a car. And so as we were walking down the street, we saw our dog laying in the street, blood rolled, because we lived on a hill. So we saw the blood just rolling down the hill. So we were freaking out, we're panicked. And so we called our mother, who was at Eastern Airlines. That's a now defunct bankrupt airlines, but she was at Eastern Airlines at the airport. And so she called the Cobb County Police Department, and they sent out an officer. Well, the officer that arrived, I don't know his first name, but he was a sergeant, and his name was Sergeant Carter. And he looked just like the guy from Gooma Powell USMC. He was a sergeant. He had the crew cut and everything, and wore the campaign hat. And he came, and what I remember is that he took time with me and my brother. He blocked the street off, allowed us to go get our pet from out the middle of the street, and he helped us wrap it up in a pillowcase. And he went in our backyard, and he helped us dig a small grave and make a cross out of some twigs that he pulled off the trees. And we made a cross, and he helped us bury our dog and said a prayer over our dog. And he waited until my mom got home to make sure that we were okay. And to me, that incident is the kind of stuff that law enforcement should be about, to protect and serve. And so that goes to the core of why I do what I do and why I want to be the sheriff of Gwinnett County, because we have to get back to actually serving and protecting our citizens and being of service. Everything is not about taking people to jail. Everything is not about, going. There are times to go after the bad guy, absolutely, but we have to get back into service. And I believe that is the core of what law enforcement should be about. And that's what I want to do for Gwinnett County citizens. And the other incident occurred while I was in high school. I was playing football in high school. And at the time, again, a little bit probably before your time, there used to be a jacket called members only jackets that everybody wanted, everybody was wearing. You were cool if you had a members only jacket. And so while we were out on the field, we ended up having somebody breaking into lockers while the players were out in the field practicing. And so I got hurt, and coach told me to call it there. I go back down to the locker, and I actually see the guy that's breaking into lockers. So I go back up, tell the coach, and me and the team, we come back down, and we tackle this guy, and we hold him down, and the police eventually comes and takes him. And so to me, I saw that, how the officers worked with us, and they spoke to us like we had sense. There wasn't any of this animosity that you see between, sometimes law enforcement and young people today, or just the assumption that we're up to something wrong. And, I was like, I want to be a part of that camaraderie and that teamwork. And again, it goes back to service and actually feeling comfortable calling law enforcement and knowing that, things are going to be taken care of and you're going to be treated right. So again, those just a couple of things that happened to me as a youth growing up that made me decide that I want to be a part of law enforcement.
So I guess let's move into, I guess, more of the policy stuff, sort of over on that side of the spectrum. So um, obviously you want the sheriff's department to be about service, to be about serving the community correctly and in the correct way, having a moral compass and truly serving the community rather with and then enforcing crimes, actually trying to help the community and help things move along and help progress. So I guess before we can even talk about progress, we have to talk about the issues first.
Right.
So to you, or in your opinion, what are the most pressing issues in the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office that need to be dealt with?
For me, those issues go back to the community. My whole platform as sheriff has been community first. And I think the sheriff and all elected officials, their job is to, again, serve the community. And I think one of the biggest pressing issues that we have to deal with, number one, is the ICE 287G deportation program that Sheriff Conway currently has in place. That must end immediately. And as the next elected sheriff, that is what I will do. I will end that program on day one. The other issue definitely is human and sexual trafficking. It has essentially become modern day slavery. It has to be stopped. And recent FBI data showed that Atlanta is the hub of human and sexual trafficking for the country. Atlanta. We're talking just 35 miles away from us right now. And so the other part of that study showed that for the Georgia area, the people who are the customers, if you will, come from the North Georgia area, which includes Gwinnett County. So we have a lot of customers pursuing humans for work and sexual trafficking out of Atlanta. We want to work together with law enforcement, federal agencies where we can to eliminate that, set these people free, and put those who would, again, practice essential modern day slavery and sexual slavery. We want to put them in jail. And then the other thing for me, outside of mental health reform, is progressive bail and bond reform. I would love to see the end of the cash bail system here in Gwinnett County. But for me to start, the progressive bail and bond reform that I would like to do would be the end of, if it is a charge of a minor misdemeanor, nonviolent, non-sexual offense, I would like to make sure that a person can do a signature bond if it's $500 or less, because what you'll find now, which I think is a huge waste of taxpayers' funds, you may have somebody sitting in the jail whose bond is $150, $200, but because of various reasons, they are unable to come up with that money. So what happens, they end up sitting in jail for months at a time. And it doesn't take long on a daily basis when you're feeding them, providing medical care and such, and housing them, that the cost of the bond becomes, the cost of keeping them in the jail, rather, becomes higher than the cost of the bond. So to me, that's mismanagement of taxpayer funds. Next with that, you have, for some people, $500, nothing, doesn't mean a thing to them. They could write that check or come up with that $500 and go on about their life, and it doesn't mean anything. But for another family, which we have to humanize the people that we're supposed to be serving, as well as officers, for another family, that $500 may mean the difference of, do they have a place to live at the end of the month, or will that family have food to eat for that month? So we have to look at all these different kaleidoscope of reasons why we need to be serving the community with the cash bond or bail reform, because I believe that if it is a minor misdemeanor offense, do a signature bond, allow this person to get back to work, taking care of their families, being a productive citizen, and then having your day in court with dignity, just like that person who didn't think twice about paying that $500.
So what is a signature bond, just to I guess for clarification's sake.
Sure. Signature bond is what they call being released on your own recognizances. You have to basically sign a bond saying that you sign a signature bond saying that you will appear in court on a given day and that you meet certain requirements, such as you are gainfully employed, you're not going to flee the jurisdiction, that the charges have been given in. And there are several other things that they can do to confirm this information to make sure that you're not going to be a flight risk and that you will actually appear in court. But most people are tied to the community because they live here and they work here. So most people are not going to leave. They just need the opportunity to be able to one, work on their defense, perhaps prior to the court date, and possibly be able to try to set aside some money so that they can pay a fine or a fee if there is one levied by a judge when they do come to court. So, again, we have to look at the big picture in dealing with everyone in the community. And, bail bond companies make a ton of money that a lot of people don't realize is non-refundable. Even if you go to court and it is determined that you are innocent, that money that you paid to a bonding company is non-refundable. And so we're basically creating a tax on the poor. And being poor shouldn't be a crime. And you shouldn't be given additional punishment simply because you're poor.
So before we go down the list of policies you have, just one more quick question. So where does this bail money go?
The bail money? Well,
yeah,
if you go through a bonding company, typically the bonding company will charge you 10% of whatever your bond is. That is the money that is non-refundable. And they basically vouch for you and say that you will show up in court. Okay. If you don't go through a bonding company and you pay that cash money out, at that point, again, most of that money is non-refundable. It goes to court fees for the stenographer in court. It goes to, parole probation fees if you get put on parole or probation, because your case has to be assigned to somebody. And so there's a whole list of things that money is used for in order to prop up, if you will, the current justice system. But in other states where they've changed and got away from the cash bail system, surprisingly, the system has been able to maintain itself without undue stress on people for minor misdemeanor charges.
Okay, so starting with the 287G, what you brought up at the beginning. So if you were to basically cut ties from the volunteer agreement and you don't abide by 287G, what would be like? How would you handle these felons that are illegal immigrants?
Well, I will start and I'll tell you this. Georgia is composed of 159 counties. Of that 159 counties, only 5 currently participate in the ICE 287G program. One of them is the Georgia Department of Corrections. I think it'd be more appropriate for the Georgia Department of Corrections to maintain that contract with ICE, because at that point, a person has already been sentenced, convicted, and has done their time. And before they are released, then the Department of Corrections can contact ICE and go, this person is about to be released. They've served their time. It appears that they are here illegally. Do you want to come pick them up? That's between the Department of Corrections after they have been convicted, and then the federal government, if they want to come pick that person up and remove them out of the county. With Gwinnett County, you have to remember that if it's a felony charge, 9 times out of 10, and of course, depending on the seriousness of the charge, 9 times out of 10, the judge is going to issue what's called a no bond, because they will list basically several reasons that this person is a threat to the community, to themselves or others. So if it's a serious felony charge, they're not going to release, or if there's any issues with whether or not this person has any ties to this county, such as, say you have a person who, for whatever reason, drives over here from Cobb County to Gwinnett County, and they actually do a drug deal and they catch them with all these drugs and stuff like that. Well, that person doesn't have any ties to Gwinnett County, so they're not going to necessarily stay in this jurisdiction. And so that could be another reason why a judge could issue a no bond and keep that person here. In those circumstances, again, they stay in jail until they have completed the judicial process of going to court, having their trial, if so, and then having a judge determine or a jury determine if they are guilty and then being sentenced. In minor misdemeanor cases, we have people who are being stopped by local law enforcement and brought in on minor violations, such as I've seen one where CBS News reported the gentleman was pulled over because his passenger wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And then that turned into him being brought to the jail, the driver being brought to the jail and ultimately being deported away from his wife and his family, and his wife was pregnant. So, and here's a person who really hadn't done a serious criminal violation. He's just here working and taking care of his family, and I guess, as they would say, flying under the radar, not causing any, criminal mischief. And so now you have a family that is broken apart and doesn't know where the next paycheck is going to come from to ensure that they have a place over there, a roof over their head, or food to eat, because usually the male of the family are typically the breadwinners, if you will, of the family. And so now you have thrown this whole family into limbo and chaos, trying to figure out how they're going to survive. And that creates a whole nother domino effect of other issues. So with felony cases, to get back to your question, with felony cases, typically there are already bars in place, if you will, no pun intended, to ensure that, the felonious criminals are not released. But unfortunately, those who are brought in on typically on minor misdemeanor charges are also caught up in the 287G program and deported as well. And that's not what it was initially designed to do. And so what a lot of people don't realize, and I've spoken to immigration lawyers and I actually spoken with immigration, the two most wanton violators of the 287G program in the United States are actually Canadian and Germans, but nobody really thinks of Canadians or Germans when you think 287G. Most people typically think, of the Hispanic population, the Africana, population, or, some other minority, a perceived minority within the general population. But the people who are actually violating the 287G program on a horrendous level are actually Canadians and Germans who, tend to look like and blend in with the majority Caucasian population in the county.
So I guess before we move any forward with any more questions on 287G, could you just give a quick rundown of the program for anybody who might not know?
Sure, absolutely. The 287G is ICE, immigration, that is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Also, some of the same people that you might see out at the airport, but this is a different division of the Department of Homeland Security. And their job is tasked with, bringing in those people who are here in this country illegally. The problem with that whole program is, and it's easily researchable, in 2009, Sheriff Conway signed on to the ICE program. However, in 2010, the Office of Inspector General, which is a federal agency, did a survey and inspected the 287G program as it was designed and how it was actually being implemented. And it was found to be faulty. It was found to violate civil rights, and it was found in most cases to not allow for tracking to show that it is violating civil rights. But if they actually looked at the numbers, there would actually be more indication that this has targeted Black and brown people throughout the country. They did that study in 2010, and in that study, again, they found that the program was faulty and it should be eliminated. but it was bringing in so much money through for-profit prisons around the country that the program continued. They also did that same study in 2018, and guess what? The same problems exist. But we're still using it. It doesn't work. It's faulty. $2 million annually extra federal civil issue. Local government's position or authority to establish a pathway to citizenship. That is the goal of the federal government. And it is a hot potato that has been tossed from administration to administration. And nobody really wants to deal with that issue. And when I talk to people who say, well, my parents or my great grandparents came through Ellis Island, well, that program no longer exists. And immigration doesn't work that way anymore. And so that's what ICE is. It basically it's a federal program through Department of Homeland Security that deports people who are here basically illegally.
So I guess this is kind of typical with a lot of pieces of legislation and things of this sort. The actual how it was actually intended to be implemented is completely different from the actual implementation. So are you saying that you find a problem with the implementation or the legislation itself?
Well, it's not just the legislation needs to be changed by the federal government and Senate. The implementation is inherently biased and racist and discriminatory against those who are minorities in this country, who come here basically seeking what all of us want. Ultimately, we want a decent place to live, a decent job, and we're willing to work hard, and we want better for our families and our children. I don't think that is a lot to ask. And when you use for-profit prisons, where the more people you can stuff into these prisons in order to hold these people, there's no incentive in place to actually help people. And so the emphasis becomes on, let's get as many people sitting in jail as we can so that we can make money. And human lives, I believe, should not be a commodity that's up for sale. So it's inherently discriminatory, it's expensive, and it's a program that needs to go. There is no fixing it. There is no tweaking it, if you will. It is one of those federal programs where either you have it or you don't. And as I was saying earlier, we have 159 counties in the state of Georgia. Only 5 currently use the program. So are you telling me that the other 154 counties just got it all wrong and only these 5 counties got it right? I don't think so.
So I mean, I guess from my understanding of what the 287G program was supposed to do, I can't speak to what it's actually doing, but what it was supposed to do was really maintain a deportation process of immigrants who committed felonies and serious felonies, so serious crimes, violent crimes like murder, sexual assault, things of that nature. So I guess the question is, let me see how I want to ask this. So a lot of people that will look on this on the outside, and depending on the communities that they live in, if they are high crime areas or high populations of immigrants in their communities, they simply don't want these types of people in the country. They don't want people that are coming here basically to create violence and destruction. That's the view of a lot of people that are in support of the program. Obviously, the people that are in opposition to the program focus on the human rights atrocities and the fact that it targets a specific community. But in the case that, I guess, can we say that it has been a complete failure, or does it work in at least some instances? Because in my personal opinion, if you're here and you commit a violent crime, I don't think you deserve to be here.
And to that point, I would absolutely agree with you, Mr. Pettis. But here's the issue. There was a time when Gwinnett County and other counties did not have the 287G program. And when we had instances where somebody, as I said before, was charged with a violent or felony crime, the same policies applied. Based on certain factors, the judges could issue a no bond, and that person would stay in jail. They've still been arrested, they've still been taken out of the community, and they're still sitting in jail until they go to court, because you can articulate that they are a danger to the community or they are a flight risk, and there are other factors to consider as well. So whether you have 287G in place or not, those same factors would still be considered, and they would still remain in jail under felony charges. However, the average person today, if you were driving down the road and let's say you got pulled over because your signal light was not working when the officer pulled you over. Well, the officer at that point, technically, based on their discretion, could take you to jail. But for someone like you, you'd probably go to jail, get your picture taken, do your fingerprint, and you probably pay, let's say, $100 bond. If you can make that $100 bond, you pay that $100 bond, and then you'll be out until your court date. But because you may be here illegally, you come in and you haven't really committed no atrocious, horrendous crime, your signal light didn't work. And so now you're coming into the jail, and because your signal light didn't work, you're now face the potential of being deported out of the country, a lot of times being deported back to a country where your life was in danger, and then, you're separating your families. And also, as part of the 287G, what you'll find is that there is no sudden decrease in crime simply because 287G is in place. If anything, you will find that crimes are more likely to be solved, because right now with 287G in place, immigrants who may be here illegally are not comfortable reporting crimes or criminal activity to law enforcement because they feel like their status would be questioned and they would be subject to be deported. So they may see crimes and they won't respond, they won't come forward as witnesses, and we could solve crimes. But if you take that fear away, and that's all 287G is, it is fear. It is fear of the others. It is fear of people who may be different or have different religious practices, and people that you don't understand that are different from you. And historically, if you look at 287G, what you will find is 287G is adopted by sheriffs and law enforcement, where they begin to notice that the demographics in a particular county are changing, and it's not predominantly a white community anymore. And so you have to address the white fear of others. And so typically that's where you will see 287G implemented, to show the predominant community at that time that, hey, we're not gonna let these people take over our county or take over our country. We're gonna get them out of here. And it is inherently wrong. And there are so many facts, so I'm not gonna even say facts, there are so many distortions of the truth out here about the program, depending on what narrative you're trying to portray. And if you're trying to portray fear, you understand all of these different narratives. When you really delve into them, they don't actually apply. And more importantly, it drives a wedge between law enforcement and the community, again, because people are scared to come forward and say, hey, I saw that guy over there, rob that bank, or I saw that guy over there, shoot this person in the street, but they're not going to say anything. And so we may have crimes go unsolved because people are afraid. When you boil it all down, it comes down to fear, whether it's fear from the immigrants who are here, or whether it's fear from the predominantly white population who are afraid of the other. And that's really what it boils down to.
So I guess in that respect, then you would advocate for the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office to completely end 287G, correct?
Absolutely. On day one, when the citizens of Gwinnett County elect me, I will end the agreement with ICE immediately.
Okay. I guess we could probably talk about that part all day. We do have some other things to get to, so I'll go ahead and move forward. Let's move forward to mental health reform. I know a big part of your campaign and your policy is mental health reform in detention centers. So could you just run us through, I guess, your comprehensive plan for mental health reform in the Gwinnett County Jail?
Absolutely. I think you have to take a look at training. And by training, I think we need mental health crisis intervention teams within the Gwinnett County Jail and also within the community. Because there are certain calls that the county police department may go to that I don't believe that the law enforcement should be involved in. I think you need mental health professionals responding to certain calls. And if law enforcement is requested to be there, they would take a backseat role and basically, if you will, providing security to make sure that nobody gets hurt when dealing with somebody who may be in mental health crisis. But what you will find is that the jails today have become a dumping ground for people who are in mental health crisis, or in some cases, people who may be on the autistic scale. And if you're familiar with people who are autistic, they can become overstimulated depending on what situation they are in out in the public. And for some, that may be something as there's too much noise, things are too loud, or it may be too much light. They need to go in an area where it's a little bit darker, or they're just being overstimulated. And so they react to the rest of us strangely when they're being overstimulated. And maybe not intentionally, they may cause an incident or scene and end up having law enforcement call where these people are arrested. Well, one, that may be a situation where we need a crisis intervention team to respond first there at the scene. Secondly, that may, I believe, if things progress to the point where they're actually brought to the jail, we need a crisis intervention team to be able to come in and deal with that person, de-escalate what is going on with this person, whether it to be able to determine, the crisis intervention team will be able to determine if they are on the autistic scale and assess, because you need medical staff to assess what is actually going on with that person. And then if it's a situation where simply because of a mental health crisis or being autistic or some other mental health issue, these people are determined to need help, instead of giving them jail time, we should be working with the mental health courts, which I actually already do part-time with the solicitor's office here in Gwinnett County. These people can then be referred to the mental health courts, and we can get them out of jail, give them some guidelines and say, if you meet these certain criteria, one, you won't get a criminal record, and two, it just will help them become stabilized and be able to continue to A, stay on their medication, two, see their doctors on a regular basis as they should, because now they have a goal that they don't go to jail and they don't get a criminal record. So we want to work with the community and work with these people who may come in. And again, there are some people who don't need to be in jail. They need treatment and they need help. And we need to partner with the resources that are already out there, despite the fact that the governor just reduced the mental health budget for the state of Georgia by, I think, another $31 million, for 2021. We need to work with the organizations in partnership with them that are already out there so that we can provide these services to those who may come in. And my goal with doing this is that it will reduce the charges or complaints of excessive force used by deputies in the jail. Right now, you may have seen in the news, there was just an incident yesterday that showed up on Fox 5 where one of the deputies was, he was finally fired because he was abusing a man that was in a wheelchair, and had back problems. And so we need to de-escalate these problems, have a crisis intervention team that can actually assess what's going on with people and then redirect them to the proper resources and all to help them. Because what happens is, as a person in the jail, if you are a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. And so they need training not just the mental health team, but all the deputies throughout the jail who may come in contact with any detainee. And that is something that needs to be done from the top down. You have to change the culture, and you have to change the way of thinking that has been in place for so many years. The law enforcement of 30 years ago, when I started in Gwinnett County, is not the law enforcement of today. And we have to be receptive to people and the changes that we're dealing with today. If you tried to put Bull Connor, from Alabama in law enforcement today and say, go out there and police the streets, we would have a problem. He would be considered a bad officer. And so we need to change the way we look at things and the way we implement policies and who we hire, so that we don't have those kind of officers out here today, whether it's the police department or if it's in the jail.
So like you said, mental health is a big part in basically in the jail. So whoever is arrested, whoever is detained, yes. So what measures will you be taking to basically help police officers, mentally with like whatever rehabilitation programs and whatnot? And because like you said, a police officer using excessive force to basically arrest or basically, handcuff somebody who's not mentally stable, like it can go both ways. Sometimes a police officer is not mentally stable and he may be using excessive force as well. What measures will you be taking to basically implement these rehabilitation programs for deputies, like you said?
Excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. One of the things that I want to do, and a lot of people may not realize that, but typically the only time someone in law enforcement has any kind of psychological examination is, one, when they're going through the hiring process, and two, when they are involved in certain situations, such as, a shooting where they have actually had to shoot someone or kill someone, or an extremely violent encounter. That can psychologically mess with anybody. But what a lot of people don't realize, and I've been there as an officer, what you don't realize is we're asking a lot from these officers. Number one, an officer may start his shift and his first call may be a shoplifter at Walmart, followed by a call of a baby that has died of SIDS in a crib. And the next call you may get to is you may go to a homicide, domestic homicide, where, a woman has been killed, savagely killed or something like that. And then that officer comes in, does his paperwork and goes home and is expected to be normal. And then come back the next day at work and do it all over again. Well, very much like being in the military and being in war, that eventually begins to have an impact on your psyche. And so as sheriff, what I would want to do is every 12 to 18 months, I would want to implement standardized psychological evaluations. And if there's an issue that happens in between time, they need to come in and see the psychologist again. Because again, it becomes like PTSD, all these things that these officers are dealing with on a daily basis, and then they're expected to go home and be normal and come back to work the next day and start all over again. And there's no telling what they may deal with the day after that and the day after that. So I want to implement those annual psychological evaluations to see, hey, are you in a good place? Are you okay? And if it comes back that they're not okay and they're not in a good place, then they need to be removed from the job that they are doing. Maybe we can find them a place where it's, a job doing something in the office, but maybe not necessarily interacting with the public, until we can get a clearance from a psychologist that says that they're okay and they're getting treatment. Unfortunately, sometimes people slip through the cracks and they make it through. But if you find those officers who are displaying unusual activity or who seem to be unusually more sadistic than people would think, we need to make it easier for officers to be able to file a complaint on their fellow officer and it be taken seriously. And we need to get those officers out of law enforcement, period. In the particular incident that happened where the guy at the sheriff's department just recently got fired, he had 2 previous employment with other agencies where he was allowed to resign in lieu of termination, to the point to where POST, the Police Officer Standards and Training Council, which gives us the right to make arrests, stripped him of his certification for 10 years. And then the Sheriff's Department right here in Gwinnett picked him up after those 10 years and allowed him to come back to work. You're hiring what you already know to be a bad apple, if you will. And so part of that for me is establishing a registry in law enforcement for officers that have been terminated or resigned in lieu of termination, that is available not only to law enforcement, but also to the public, because we're hiring people to come in and serve the public. And if these people already have done bad things in other agencies, we don't want to bring them into our county and say, okay, now go patrol our citizens and go serve our citizens when they already have a bad history. So we need a police registry to make sure that they are held accountable, and if need be, keep them out of law enforcement.
So staying within the department, I guess we know that the demographics of Gwinnett County have been changing. They are changing. I mean, obviously they were changing when you came here in 1989. Obviously now we are one of the most diverse counties in the country. Like you said, I believe it's close to the top 10, or if not in the top 10. That same level of diversity needs to be shown within the agencies and departments that lead us. So what will you do as Gwinnett County Sheriff to increase diversity in the Sheriff's Office?
Obviously, the first thing we have to do to increase diversity in the Sheriff's Office is we have to build a bridge of trust and communications with the community first. And if we don't have that, who's going to want to come work for you? Nobody. And so, unfortunately, right now, law enforcement is not the prime career that most people want to choose. Most law enforcement officers out here are good people who have chosen a profession. And much like me, they got into this profession because some may say it's naive, but they got into this profession to actually help people. And they actually do that every day. Unfortunately, you do have some out here who do not deserve to be in law enforcement. And so you got to build a relationship with your community first. Then once we do that, we can begin to actively recruit from all the different diverse people in our community, from everybody from, you know, the Latino community, the Latinx community, the Black community, the white community, the Asian community, the Bangladeshi community, the Sikh community, Muslim, whoever, that they should be in our ranks, so to speak, so that they can actually represent what our community really looks like. And so to do that, again, like I said, you've got to go back to building that bridge of communication with the community, because there are some people, if you take a look at it, everybody can't be a pilot. Everybody can't be an engineer. And much like that, everybody can't be a cop or a police officer. And so we need to we need to understand that. And just like there are certain things that will wash you out, so to speak, from being a pilot or an engineer, there should be things in place to wash you out from being a police officer. And you just need to choose another career. But that's what we need to do, build those bridges of communication with the community. We got to have trust. Once we build that communication and trust, and people see, okay, this is a good department that's actually involved in the community, and they don't present this us against them mentality when dealing with the community, I think you will be more than likely able to get people who are interested in actually serving the community in that capacity.
So, and like you said, not everyone's a pilot, not everyone's an engineer, and we have to understand that, but also we're a part of America, and I think we need to understand you because you represent us. So, and yes, at the end of the day, that's done by all of Gwinnett County, and we're all very diverse. So here's my question: what community-oriented events have you held, or are you planning on holding to basically account for this diversity factor, whether that be ethnicity, whether that be religious activities, or anything? Because I know that you are endorsed by churches, I believe, pastors.
Yes.
So how will you basically like you said, how will you communicate with other diverse communities in Gwinnett County?
Well, first, I think to understand what I will do, I think you have to understand, as you said, you need to understand me. Early on in my law enforcement career, I saw that there were disparities in the criminal justice system between how youth, the poor, immigrants were treated in the criminal justice system. So for me, as a person, I decided that I'm within the criminal justice system on the law enforcement side, and I decided that what I would do is I would work within the law enforcement side in my career, but also outside of my uniform, my daily activities as a police officer, I would work within the community to help bring about change. And so one of the things that I've been doing for the last 20 years, I've been now actually sit on the board of directors, but I still do it. I mentor. I've been mentoring young folks for 20 years now, both with Gwinnett County School Board and with a program that I'm a part of called LEADS, which is law enforcement agencies assisting in the development of students. And we're actually, we operate out of Snellville, but we end up dealing with children from young folks from all over the county. Some have been referred from the juvenile justice system. Some have been, hey, can you talk to my son or my daughter? You know, they need a mentor, somebody that they can talk to. And so what we do, we did after school programs, we did mentorship. We put them in contact with people in the fields with jobs where they were interested in. And so we try to show the youth, one, that you have options and you have opportunities. And so you have to be prepared to take advantage of the opportunities when they are presented to you. And you have options, again, if you prepare yourself properly, you network, make the right connections. So that's what I've been doing. I've been actually in the community, mentoring our youth, getting them involved with things that will help change their life, working with their families. We've actually been doing a program working with the Department of Agriculture during this COVID-19 crisis. Since they can't get to the schools and they're stuck at home, we've actually done, food drives, and we've gone out and we fed, just a couple of weeks ago, we fed over 800 families, that came into a church parking lot, and we just gave away food that we got from the Department of Agriculture, and we changed lives and doing stuff like that. So what I would do, obviously, already having that connection with the community, with faith leaders and community influencers right now in Gwinnett County, where I've shown that I can bring people together. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, the Demetrius Hollins incident, where the young man was punched in the face by a Gwinnett County police officer, and then the other officer came up and kicked him in the head. Do you remember that situation? Okay, excellent. So one, as a Black man, that hurt me. Two, it hurt me because I work for Gwinnett County Police Department, and I was not expecting that out of the officers that worked in my department, especially at that time being the chief of staff in the chief's office. And so there was a lot of people in the community that were upset, which I'm sure you can understand. And so what I did, I tried to provide answers and healing. And what I did, now mind you, Black Lives Matter, is just now, as they say, I guess it's hot or popular now, but I was on board with Black Lives Matter when it first came out because I understood the message that they were talking about. So I was able to get with my chief, and what we did is we brought pastors and faith leaders from around Gwinnett County. We brought community influencers from Gwinnett County. We brought the Department of Justice, the police department, and the district attorney's office. But more importantly, we brought representatives from Black Lives Matter. When nobody else was trying to listen to them, we actually brought them to the table, and we were able to hear each other out and hear each other's perspectives. And from that meeting, we were able to begin the process of healing in the community. And we were also, because we heard what Black Lives Matter was talking about, we made changes in Gwinnett County police policy. And that's how you bring people together and get things done. You got to be willing to not only bring people to the table, but they need to have a voice at the table. And that's what I've been doing all of my law enforcement career.
So you've been mentoring, you've been working with the youth, you've been doing so much, and you've been gathering all these religious leaders all across the county to basically stand as Gwinnett County. However, and I know you're opening to mentoring anybody, like it doesn't matter if you're Indian, Sikh, like you said, Bangladesh, like it doesn't matter. However, what will you do to connect with them like you're connecting with these churches? Are you going to be doing anything like that? Because
well,
yeah.
I'm already doing it. I've been involved. If you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, I've been involved with multiple faiths and religious leaders throughout Gwinnett County, both Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, and Catholic. I've been throughout the entire county working, and Jewish, working with many faith leaders who support me. Some would, they support me in the background, so to speak, which I understand because, churches are 501c3 and they don't want to interfere with their 501c3 status as far as their taxes and such. But I do have faith leaders who do support me in many other ways and help get the word out on who I am and how I and all of us working together can make changes. So I've actually already been doing it, and I've been doing that for years. This is nothing new just because of the campaign. And one of the reasons that I even became a candidate for sheriff is because I actually received a phone call from a faith leader in Gwinnett County in Beaufort who said, I've got some people that need to talk to you. And of course, when the pastor calls, I show up. And when I showed up, there were multiple faith leaders from throughout the county from different religions. And they told me at that time, they said, we would like you to consider running for sheriff. We're not happy with the way Gwinnett County, the direction Gwinnett County is moving in. You've always been out there. And when we pick up the phone and call, you answer. If you don't answer right away, you call right pretty quickly. You're there when we need you. And that's what the community needs. They need somebody that's accessible and there when they need them. So it was because of faith leaders, multiple faith leaders within Gwinnett County that in their quest to get me to consider it is the reason I became involved in it. Of course, to take on the mantle of being the sheriff of the county, who is the most powerful law enforcement official in the county, that's a large undertaking. And of course, after much prayer and talking to my pastor, I decided to take on this task and not to burden you with my religion, but my pastor told me, he said, sometimes, God has work to do, but you're standing in the way. And sometimes you have to get out the way and let God do his work. And so I said, you're right. And I got out the way and I'm presenting myself as me and everything that I began to worry about as I started this process, I never have to worry about it because every time I do worry about something, and pardon me, God just kind of takes it out the way and provides the way and makes it happen. So I got out the way and I let God do his work. And so that's what I'm doing. And again, for me, it's about serving all of Gwinnett County citizens, not just a certain segment of the county, but everyone, because we're too great of a county and too diverse to only serve a certain percentage of the county.
I'm thinking of right now is just like a perfect line. You listen to their call and you stand up for them all. And I think that
I like it.
I like it. Yeah. And I like that you're opening up yourself to a lot of other religious leaders, and that actually encompasses the diversity in our county. That's great.
Yeah. So I guess we have to get close to closing. I guess the question everyone's really having is, what makes you more qualified than the other two candidates, Kibo Taylor, especially for this August 11th runoff, and eventually, if you do make it to the runoff, Lou Solis?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with Kibo Taylor. Kibo Taylor retired as a major with Gwinnett County Police Department at his time. But Mr. Taylor retired almost 11 years ago. He's been out of law enforcement almost 11 years. And he's done other things in the private sector. But he is, he's outdated, so to speak. He doesn't understand law enforcement and what's going on today. Can you imagine if you, you stepped out of school or you stepped out of a job that you've been doing, and then you take a 10-year break and come back and decide I want to do it again, you realize how much has changed since you last left your job. And so what I bring to the table is one, he retired as the major. I retired as assistant chief. I retired as part of the command staff that actually ran the department. He did not do that. As assistant chief, I was over the support operations division, which included the 911 center. So when you call 911, I was in control of that. I was also in charge of the police academy training. So when officers got hired and trained, I was over that. I was over records. When you get a report, I was over that. When we have like these thunderstorms we've been hearing today, when we had tropical storms come through, snowstorms and all that, I was over the emergency response centers to make sure that we got the roads cleared and people were being rescued and taken care of. I was over that. And so as a result of all of that, I also had to present in front of the Board of Commissioners many times regarding, policies and procedures and issues affecting the police department. But more importantly, as the division commander over that, I actually helped to manage a $131 million budget. Mr. Taylor has never done any of that. And as far as I'm concerned, that's likened to, if you were in an airplane and it was having engine problems, would you want to put a seasoned professional pilot behind the wheel of an airplane, or would you want to put a toddler who's never flown an airplane or doesn't have a clue what he's doing? And essentially for Mr. Taylor, he would be a toddler. He has no clue what he's doing. And that's not to be condescending to him, he does not have the knowledge. And you have to have more than just, I want to be sheriff, than to take on such a huge task. As far as Mr. Solis goes, Mr. Solis is a recent transplant to Gwinnett County. Barely been here over 2 years. I've been here 31 years. He basically was brought here by Butch Conway in order to take his place as the next sheriff. So I feel like I'm more invested in Gwinnett County because I've been here. I've been through all the changes over the last 30 years. And again, this is my home. This is where I raise my kids. And I want Gwinnett County to continue to be a great place to live, and not some Johnny come lately, essentially, who was brought in by his good old boy buddy, Butch Conway, to come in and continue the same old outdated practices that Butch Conway has implemented for all these years. You have to keep in mind, as far as I'm concerned, Butch Conway is the same sheriff that said that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization and they need to be eliminated. And so when you bring in somebody like Lou Solis, who is essentially of the same mindset and is a cookie cutter cutout of Butch Conway, we have to make a choice about who we really want to lead Gwinnett County into this very uncertain, chaotic future that we have. And so to all of that, what I would tell you is that experience matters. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have the heart to serve the community.
Well, I said that's definitely been the most vivid thing that we've heard out of everybody. That was actually pretty nice. I guess this is going to be the last question that we've got, so we can let you get on with your busy day. What can we as the youth do to get more involved in local government?
Here's what I can tell you. Again, I have a young daughter. She's 22 years old. And I've told my son, I've always been active in the community. This is what I told them. I said, one, the biggest thing you got to do is register to vote, and then follow through and actually vote. If you're old enough and eligible to vote, you're not going to see any changes if you don't get out and vote with people who are aligned with your same interests. And when we're facing all the voter suppression tools and methods that we saw Governor Kemp use and Roethlisberger use right now in the last primary election, we have to keep in mind that there are people that don't want us to vote. So many of our elders fought and died and gave up so much for our right to vote. And so for us to be so nonchalant about the opportunity to go in that booth and select the person who is aligned with where you want to see your county, your local government go, and you don't do it, then you can't complain when something crazy happens and it immediately affects you, because your local government and your local elected officials will have more of an immediate impact on your daily life, many times more so than the federal government. So it's important that you get out and vote, get active, get engaged in what's actually going on in your community, so you can know when somebody's feeding you a line of bull and you can know when somebody's being real with you. And most importantly, after that, don't believe everything somebody tells you. Research the facts. Do your own research. Don't let Instagram or Facebook or TikTok be your educators. Go and actually research, what you're seeing and find out if it's true. Because as I've had to show my daughter, different people and different groups have agendas. And if they can try to sway you with their own agendas by giving you false information, they will do it. So go make sure you research and educate yourself.
Well, actually, this is actually one more point. So when we did interview Mr. Taylor the other day, he actually brought up something kind of interesting. He was talking about creating something of like an advisory board of the youth, of the kind of high school kids, people from all age groups in the county, pretty much. Would you be interested in doing something similar to that?
Absolutely. I think that is something that is necessary. That is one of the things that my campaign managers, I think, one, you need to have a citizens advisory review board that can come in and actually have some teeth, and not just say, I have a board to say you have a board, but actually have a citizens review board that has teeth and they can make recommendations that will be followed through. And we need that for transparency. And that includes, I hate to call you young people, but that includes the millennials and the Generation X's and Y's and everybody else. We need to have people who represent the community from all walks of life, from the housewife to the businessman to the college student, to the high school student. Because we need to have transparency so you can see what's going on. And as I was telling someone the other day, even though elected a sheriff, the jail is not the sheriff's jail, it's the people's jail. The money that the sheriff gets to run the jail and other things within the department, that's the people's money. That's not his or her money. And so we need transparency, and you need to be able to know, one, I can go in here and I can know what's going on. I can see what's going on. There's transparency. The sheriff is holding himself accountable to the people that put him in office, and the sheriff is accessible. You need a sheriff that if you pick up the phone, he's not hiding from you. You can pick up the phone, call, and within a decent amount of time, you should be able to have contact with that sheriff. Accessibility is very important.
Yes, it very well is. Well, Mr. Clemons, we don't want to take up too much else of your time, so I think we'll go ahead and end this here. Mr. Clemons, we thank you so much for coming on and doing this with us. This is so important to the youth community to get to actually talk to and get to know who may or may not be their future leaders in the county. So we really thank you for giving us this experience, and also for you responding so fast. I never have gotten a response that fast before by anyone. So that was pretty, that was nice. It was nice to see that you were active and involved in the community and ready to take us on. So on behalf of everyone, on behalf of the entire UD board, including myself, Jalen Pettis, Lokesh Joshi, Akil Taraga, Josh Bayham, Rachel Haqqani, and Lauren Johnson, we just like to thank you for coming on. Sorry, I'll let you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for having me. And two, what you saw is the type of leadership that I want to bring to the county. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because you sent something out and I responded fairly quickly. And that's how our elected officials should be. You shouldn't be getting, a phone call from me 3, 4, 5 days later. I responded fairly quickly. And that's the type of leadership that I want to continue to push forward as the next sheriff of Gwinnett County. But I also want to tell people where they can find me if they hadn't noticed already above my head. And they can find me at my website at clemons4sheriff.com. I am also on Instagram at Clemons4Sheriff. And you can also find me on Facebook at Elect Clemons, Gwinnett County Sheriff.
All right. Well, everybody, I'm sure you heard that. So if you want more information or want to talk to Mr. Clemons yourself, you can go ahead and go to one of these resources and go talk to them. Guys, this has been UD Town Hall episode number 5. We thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you watch this video and share this with your friends. Mr. Clemons, good luck in the Democratic primary election on August 11th. For all the people that can vote, go get out there and go vote in that election, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clemons.
And stay tuned for more episodes.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.